My man Ron, how you doing, bro?
How you doing, Rich?
Oh man, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Um, this subject. Let me be honest, man. This subject got me nervous.
Yes, it's a tough subject to deal with, Richard. And I'm going to ask our audience tonight to just turn the lights down low and let's be a little serious because this is a serious topic and it's something that we all need to be aware of. Every day when we turn on the news, we hear about shootings, robberies, and social injustices. However, there's a darker crime being committed right under our nose
Mm-hmm.
in communities across America. It's called human trafficking.
Yeah.
It's a $1 billion business with a high price to pay for its victims.
Yeah.
Today, human trafficking attorney 𝐊𝐿 Phelps will tackle the topic and leave us with answers on what we can do as a community. Today's guest is attorney 𝐊𝐿 Phelps.
Hold on, give me 1 second. Eradicating, can you hear me?
She says she couldn't hear her mic.
She can't hear my. Can she hear? She's not in. Let me give me 1 second, everybody.
She says I don't have
I can't hear
audio.
you.
There you go.
I can talk a lot.
There you go.
Are you
Could
good
you-
now?
Hello.
Can you hear us, 𝐊𝐿? No, I don't think she can hear us.
Huh. Let's see. Give me 1 second, everybody. Let's try to see if we can get the audio working. Give me 1 second. If you can hear me and I can hear you, then it's definitely. Give me 1 second.
I got sound.
There you go. Now you better.
You better?
Woo!
Can you
Hey,
hear us?
welcome to Build Different
Yes.
Podcast.
Yes. Okay. Well, that was worth it. All right.
No
Sorry.
problem.
Yes. So
Well, hey,
Sorry.
we're extremely excited to have you. I mean, there's no better person to tackle this subject than you. You know, a person that's had a background of dealing with issues, and I'll allow you to go into details if you like, but a place of abuse, and then getting a support system, and then going to college and doing great things, become a person that didn't become so much of a victim of what they've been through, but became better and became a person, a change agent. And in an industry, I don't want to call it industry, but in this particular crime syndicate that is one of America's best kept secrets, I think. I mean, nobody's talking about it like they should. And I think this show wants to bring light to it. And I want to thank you for having me. But anyway, you're a human trafficking attorney. You fought in legislation to help, bring greater and more stiffer penalties to the people who get involved in these types of crime. And I just applaud you. And welcome to Build Different.
Thank you, Richard. So good to be here with someone, that is such good friends with, somebody that I care so much about. So I really appreciate the invitation and learned that you guys launched a couple of weeks ago, and I was so excited. And I said, well, why am I not on as the first guest? Not that I had to be the very, very first, but I'm really honored to be among the first guests. And sorry about the sound issues, because one thing I didn't do that I may have, regretted is I didn't do enough tech probably in my lifetime. I have my friends that are my techie friends, and none of them live close enough for nights like this. So I appreciate it so much. And I can't start without saying that I wouldn't be here today without your co-host. So Mr. Jenkins, Coach, a lot of people call him Ron. I think some people used to call him Ronald. But for me, he was definitely Jenkins when I first met him. I was locked up in juvenile hall. I was 13 years old, and I had been sort of thrown out from society. And here was this young man. I think we talked earlier, he had cut his Jerry curls off, but he was very, very sharp. Every day he came in, he was very, even though he had no more hair, he was well groomed. He was always ready to meet us kids and act as if we were just so important. And it wasn't an act. That was the thing too. He treated us like we mattered. Whereas I think a lot of other staff didn't see us as worthy of taking the time. He showed up with a lot of just honoring us, honoring himself, modeling that for us. And it was something that he still does to this day. So I met him when I was 13. I was, like I said, locked up, and it was a pretty regular place for me, but I knew that I was on my way to YA if it kept going. And for those in California that are listening, they know what that is, right? Youth Authority, Youth Prison. At the time, I was looking at a year, and girls were going up when they were looking at a year because they didn't have any programs for girls. So they actually put me and 4 of the girls. This was just one of those God moments where I, was put into a program where the staff actually had to say they cared and they believed in the kids that were there, and they had to take time with them, commit to running groups with us, get us help and services. And Ron really took his job seriously, as anyone who's worked with him knows, and you now know from doing a podcast with him. He's going to take it very seriously, and he's going to make sure that he shows up, and he showed up for us. And it wasn't only me that responded to him. We were all so very lucky, and I'm sure there'll be some people out there who are finding this on social media who recognize him, and will give him shouts out for everything he had done. Just like I said, to show up, be happy, singing, praising us, really letting us find out who we were. And because I forgot to mention this part, because there was no girls unit that would take me, my only alternative was YA, I was put into a boys unit. And so there were 4 of us girls that were put into this boys program, and he was charged with making sure we were safe. I think that's a really important part of this whole journey I've been on, is because not many men especially were in my life to make me feel safe at that time of my life. At that time, I had already been on the streets, I had already been trafficked, and here comes somebody who is going to protect me, even made sure I was eating well, made sure I was exercising, that I was going to my classes, that he had talks with my teachers, really stepped into a parent figure. So that was the last thing I wanted to say, that, when we finally reunited, when I graduated from Fresno State many years later, I was 25. So many years later, after 5 tours in JCs in different junior colleges, and making my way to Fresno State, majoring in math and graduating summa cum laude, and I found Ron, and we reconnected. We haven't been apart ever since. So that's 22 years now that he's been in my life, and I've called him Dad. So I'm just very, very, very happy to, like I said, be supportive, bring some positivity out there, let people know that there's encouraging, loving, just men and community members, and even those who have been harmed, who really care for our children and want to do the best for them. Because I think we hear the opposite story so much.
Right.
That's awesome. Ron, how much you pay her to say that?
He made the investments a long time ago.
There you go.
Let me just say, she mentioned earlier about being first. You were first because your story has given me a perspective in this field that I had no idea about, even when first meeting you back at Fresno County Juvenile Hall. So the things that I've learned from you, the things that I've learned from the survivors in this community, the strength and the power that women possess, even in times of tough times, they still prevail. So you were first in me coming up with this idea, because I've seen you train all over the country and do your work in the human trafficking space. And that inspired me to want to do more in my communities, in my spaces. So you were first with this project because it's inspired by you.
So in the terms of human trafficking, I want to start like very basic because I'm kind of almost embarrassed that I didn't really know exactly what it was. I mean, of course, I understand from the human trafficking, it means you're probably be kidnapping, coercing somebody against their will to do something that they shouldn't be doing, whether it be sex, labor, or and I was reading that even there was a point when they were kidnapping and taking their organs. So I learned so much about it. So could you explain what human trafficking is, and is sex trafficking and labor trafficking under that, or they're all just a part of the same thing?
Sure, and that's a really important concept to understand, because even just saying coercion, saying those things, kidnapping, equating them in there is really important, because I think people used to see this and think, even when I first started sharing my story, that's a teen prostitute or that's a child prostitute, and we've come so far since then. So I'm really happy to hear just even the references to those types of actions that you're talking about, that people were blind to for so long. Yes, in the law, in federal law, human trafficking, labor trafficking, attempts at labor trafficking, all of that, and attempts at sex trafficking is under what is called Chapter 77, and the Traffic Victim Protection Reauthorization Act that's been reauthorized various times. And there are a number of codes that come under 18 USC, United States Code. One of them 1589, one of them 1591, one of them, which would be, sex trafficking, 1594 for forced labor. And they all have to do with those acts of somebody is committing an act of against a person, or attempting to commit an act against a person, usually using something like you said, fraud, coercion, force, to get them to do something. So labor trafficking or sex trafficking. And it's for some benefit for them. And you also have third-party beneficiaries. So there's a code that is in the law that says that third parties can be treated equally in terms of criminal convictions for profiting and benefiting, and knowingly or in some, very grossly negligent way, reckless way, having no regard for the fact that they're harming victims and that they're profiting. So it's all sort of in there. It's grown. The law has grown as we've learned. So as cases are filed, some of them criminal cases, some of them civil cases, we become educated about, how savvy defense lawyers are going to be, and how people are going to try to get away with things like slavery, still to this day. So now we have one of the most recent updates is, attempts at sex trafficking, labor trafficking, attempts at that can result in civil liability for if people are hurt. So sometimes third parties will set up, labor, sort of cheap labor camps, get products ready, and then just because the end buyer, in one of the Supreme Court cases, the end buyer was Walmart, just because the end buyer found out and said somehow these products, this shrimp is tainted, we think, so we're not going to accept it. All those people who were hurt didn't have any claims against all the companies that had hurt them along the way, because they had this attempt at sex trafficking. So that is what I call bad law. It was meant to be good law, and then when it was tried to be applied, it was bad law, and then we had to go back to the books, rewrite it, and Congress tries to get it right, sometimes when the courts are not sure, or they're interpreting it in a way that is unclear. So that's federal law. It's all enacted under, the idea that we don't, in this country, we don't permit slavery, right? We've outlawed slavery. We don't have slavery. It's not supposed to exist. And so anyone who's trying to profit off of it, benefit off of it, is going to be held liable criminally or civilly.
Got it. Okay. So kind of like starting from the genesis is, how is it like the typical girl. I was reading some stats and it said that 1 in every 6 runaways become sex trafficked. Is that how they target them? Are they, because I've read that they get them out of churches. Foster care is a big place they get them out of. So how do they get these women to do this? I want to see if you can like take us like because I know it's all psychological in a way. So can you take us that? What do they say? Are they sending women to coerce these little young girls to come? Or how is this done?
I mean, I think everybody's story is different in terms of how they may, but there's some commonalities that happen, like some common threads. So some common things that can happen is telling somebody that you're going to provide things that they're not being provided. So if they have a lot of needs, if they're a runaway, if they're in foster care, they're feeling lack of love, connection, they don't have a home, they don't have food to eat, you know, they're needing to provide for a new child or something like that, then yeah, this person is going to be able to say to you, oh, I'll provide you with these needs, or we'll do this together until this need is met, and then we'll see what happens next, right? Like we'll then get out of it. So having an understanding that needs sometimes leads to it, or they could create a need. So I have friends and many friends who had secure, safe childhoods in every way. They say they were raised in like you said, in a church, professional parents, safe neighborhoods, weren't really exposed to that. They may have had some exposure, like we all did, I think, as young people, to over-sexualized genres of music and of just sort of culture that tells us that somehow, you know, I should be making this much money, and if my body can make it for me, then that's a good thing, right? Like we just get this messaging constantly, especially as young women, that that's how we should be able to make money. And so if somebody can find a person that's like that, who has desirable qualities that they think they could sell, then they're going to maybe charm them, give them, again, a whole bill of dreams and create needs that they maybe even didn't think they had. So maybe that person, like my friend Rachel Thomas, didn't even want to be a millionaire, but then you're telling, you know, her, well, you could be a millionaire. Oh, well, maybe I do want to be a millionaire. Maybe I do need that. And that's sort of the initial hook or bait that someone could use if it's needs that they're focused on, either actual needs, preserve, you know, needs that are sort of instilled in the person. They're made up in a sense, and then they from there start the process of breaking that person down.
Okay. So it becomes a point where, from my own ignorance, you see people, okay, you're in America. And I know that, you know, there's out of 196 countries, the 36 of them have traffic laws, human trafficking, but they don't enforce them. So I guess it's all on the big bad US of A. So the commonality about this is this only happens to undocumented people. This is not an American problem. They're coming from Mexico. They're coming from Colombia. They're coming from Nicaragua, and they come over here. They get in this country illegally, and they need a place and they need a way to make money. This is not an American problem.
Right.
So this is what people got, kind of the sentiment that the ignorance that people have.
So one of the links I think you should provide is with IJM, just because you made that comment, because International Justice Mission does work all over the country to train local law enforcement on how, and local lawmakers on how to make the laws and then how to enforce them, so that people who are in source countries or even destination countries can have more protections for vulnerable people and victims. So whether that's with arrests, prosecutions, or education and prevention, IJM is there typically on the arrest side. I haven't seen them as much in the civil side, which is the work that I'm doing here in the United States, but definitely trying to train law enforcement, and they're a wonderful faith-based organization that does this work internationally, so that people aren't flooded in here into the United States. However, you know, we still know that other cultures, as you've alluded to, like some of them don't have trafficking laws, some of them don't have the same values we do, some of them don't believe that people even should be in charge of their own destiny because the government knows better. You know, there are some governments and entities and even families that believe that individuals shouldn't make their own decisions. So So understanding that, you know, in the US, we look at people and we think, you know, that person can't be enslaved because they're driving a car,
Yeah.
or because they have, you know, a credit card, or because they have clothes to wear or food to eat. You know, that person can't be being trafficked. They must be doing this by choice. You know, that to me is what psychologists would call, and my friend Steve Hassan would know all the right citations to give you for it, but it's basically a fundamental attribution error. We think that because we see people, because they have some traits that look like they could be free, or that they could run away at any time, then they are free. And that typically will keep them entrapped for longer, because then it feels like people are ignoring them.
Yeah. Well, you know, Martin Luther King said the two most dangerous things in the world is conscious stupidity and sincere ignorance. So if you think this is okay, you just being consciously stupid. So I want to give you sincere ignorance. So, I mean, I know that, you know, foster care, and massage parlors where we've seen a lot of these sex trafficked people, but also there's a online, as far as apps, they're using all kind of social media and online as another component.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting these young girls online, which creates a whole nother danger. How do you guys legislate that? Or how do you go about fighting that, the online attack for young girls and women, as far as getting them into sex trafficking?
So grooming is tough. I filed a case for a client in 2019. It was my first case, and it was against Craigslist. And I said to Craigslist, hey, what my client says to me is that she wouldn't have been sold if it wasn't for your site that was offering these places where she could be sold, and actually allowing children to post pictures, allowing their traffickers to post pictures of them and to have them be sold through their site. So that lawsuit happened, and unfortunately we went to, you know, the Ninth Circuit, and they found that there was protections for Craigslist, not for the 15-year-old who ends up sold on the site, but for Craigslist. So we ended there. Everything was resolved to everyone's, you know, liking. Everything was resolved, but that law is being fought now. Like I said, we get laws bad. Bad laws happen because of interpretation, because of whatever reason, sometimes because they're even the way that they're written. But bad laws happen, and bad law is made in court sometimes, and we have to go back and either redraft or clarify that Congress never intended for companies that are promoting child prostitution or promoting sex trafficking in any way, or allowing it to happen or facilitating it, never intended them to not have liability to those victims. As soon as you take away liability, as soon as you make it okay, they're not going to just police themselves for the fun of it, right? They're not going to do that. So the laws right now, the way that they're standing is that there aren't as many protections, but things have gotten pretty loud in DC, and there are amazing organizations like National Center on Sexual Exploitation, 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐎, that's fighting for legislation every day, and they go to corporations too, and they say, you need to do the right thing. Otherwise, you know, shareholders could come after them, individuals could come after them for liability still. They're not off the hook in every single circuit in the United States. There's some disagreement between some circuits on what 230 does for these tech companies, if they're protected or not. So they could end up in the U.S. Supreme Court, and we could end up with good law from this U.S. Supreme Court. Can you imagine if we ended up with good law from this U.S. Supreme Court? I would come back and let you know. So I would be so happy and so thrilled. I think right now what you do is you have to hold people accountable. I know Gavin Newsom has made, you know, legislation where there'll be automatic fines for certain activities. There's a lot more protection in California for young people than there is for young people all over the world. And there is a matter of just holding them accountable now.
Yeah. You know,
tech companies can't stop this.
Got it. I'm going to touch on just one quick on labor trafficking. So domestic workers and farms are 1 and 2 where you see that. Here's the question: how often, like if ICE comes in and they find an undocumented person, they deport them, but we're not seeing a whole lot of case where the person who hired them is going to jail or fined. Has there been any type of emphasis on getting the people who are hiring the undocumented? Because in a way, you're undocumented. Like you said before, you need food, you need clothes, you need shelter. You're going to take the job. You know what I mean? And we can't have a system. It has to be a system of checks and balances where we are going after people who hire them just as much as we go after somebody who's kind of like the victim, right?
Yeah, I mean, people make money off of other people's tragic circumstances, and that is terribly sad and is culpable behavior. I mean, it should be punished. It definitely needs to be punished. And so how we do that is we get smarter when we're investigating. So I train law enforcement. Many other survivors train law enforcement who have lived through these experiences. And I have friends who are experts in anti-money laundering who can explain circles around me about what you should be looking for in terms of people forming various LLCs or businesses to try to hide some of this, real estate being involved in hiding some of these assets that they're gaining from their illegal activities of trafficking. That goes beyond human smuggling. It goes beyond, somebody's paying a debt to get somewhere. These are people who I know in New York City, sex trafficking, and Venezuelans and others who are escaping horrific situations, starvation, and everything else. They are, not allowed to work. When they're getting someplace, sometimes they're not allowed to work. They're not permitted to work. They're there legally. Their presence is legal. They have all the documentation, but then they're not permitted to work sometimes. And then that can make them vulnerable to something like sex traffickers who set them up. So we see that as well. And you're right. If we're not going to catch them in a sting operation arresting someone for prostitution. That's not how we're going to catch those people, or in domestic servitude, or in farming. One of the big cases that I've been hearing about lately, and sort of started to dabble in some research, is with the marijuana, pot growing. You mentioned farming. Watching some of the profits that come out of those farms. What people have realized is that some people are using labor trafficking to do those activities. And if they are labor trafficking and that's impacting their profits, then those victims who have been victimized have claims. Now, if those victims don't know about their claims that they have against these companies, or if they won't exert those rights because they don't believe in them, maybe they're of the same nationality or background, and so they don't believe that they can assert those rights, then that's dangerous. And we need to have Attorney General step in and others step in to file those lawsuits.
So do they have rights if they're undocumented?
Yes, absolutely. So no one in our country can be enslaved. That's not legal for anyone to ever be enslaved in domestic servitude, in the household. They can't be indebted to do that. So you can't bring somebody here and then say, you know what, you have to pay me this much off and free, basically, labor. You have this debt to me until you do. That's not permitted.
There was this story I was reading about this guy who had undocumented people. And the way he explained it was, you're in this country illegally. You've committed a crime. So based on the 13th Amendment, slavery is illegal except if you committed a crime. So this was his crazy justification.
Yeah, he could be charged. That could be one of the factors that they charge him with, is misuse of the law. So when people misstate the law, which happens all the time, then, or I'll call the police on you if you try to escape, things like that, then that could be one of the elements of his crime. One of the things that proves what he was doing. Yeah.
Got it. So I guess that's why they got that that Girls Gone Wild guy, because he was that guy there, man. He was I understand that he was just way over the top with it. And there was some, women that were sex trafficked through his.
Yeah. And those are, like you said, these are people who were growing up in wonderful families. They were told they could do anything they want with their life. They were beautiful. They thought they were going to turn 18 and need to have some extra money. They applied for a job, thought it was going to be a legitimate, job. And he was recruiting them, by the way, before they were 18, many of them before they were 18, and recruiting someone for the purposes of sex trafficking, recruiting a minor for the purposes of sex trafficking, even without force, fraud, or coercion, is illegal. That would be a violation. So, you know, he was getting away with that crime for too long.
Got it. And you know, let me ask you this question. What do you think? First of all, I want to correct something I said. I said that it's America's best kept secret. It's America's worst kept secret. Okay, so let me correct that. I don't want to think I'm condoning this foolishness.
Yeah, no.
Do you see the racial landscape? It was hard for me to kind of find data, but for data I'm finding the majority of the people who are sex trafficked domestically are minorities, which is Asian, Blacks, and Latinos. Is there any
Native Americans, like per capita, or
right.
for their population here,
right.
they're at a higher rate trafficked than what the
right.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that has somewhat to do with need, but it also has to do with the way we create fetishes around minority girls, boys, individuals, the way that, you know, we have created some of that in terms of the demand, and we've also diminish the value of some of the people who are the most valuable people in our country, as we're seeing now, who could lead us through any of the toughest times. So I just believe that, you know, as far as my case, I was in this area of like being mixed race, and I don't think targeted for one purpose or another, but I was a young, vulnerable girl. I was 12 when I was first trafficked. Who in the world is, you know, having a 12-year-old stand on the street? It's just not right. And so we have to correct ourselves too, in terms of what we're watching, what we're consuming, what we create in terms of desires by individuals that are out there. It's not. And I absolutely blame the person who's doing the purchasing, because they have the ultimate act there, and the person who's doing the trafficking. But I also understand we're in this larger culture where we're creating these problems, and it's disproportionate.
Okay, so I'm gonna step out on a limb here. Do you think that the reason why human trafficking is not as media attention grabbing as it should be, or there's not so much as all out legal Supreme Court campaign, appellate judges, a law for all the states, because it is minority women? I mean, if it was, you know, Sally that was a senator's daughter, it'd be plastered all over CNN and Fox News and NPR and everywhere else, right? But since it's these minorities coming from urban communities, Latino communities, there's not a whole lot of spotlight.
So there's a couple things. One is, yes, I mean, we had the Mann Act, and we had white slavery sort of campaigns before my time. I was still trafficked, you know, like, but we had those sort of pushes because people thought, well, yeah, it is my daughter who's now being sold, and I don't want that, right? And that is important to say, that people need to know it is in every community. It does not discriminate. Trafficking does not discriminate, does not. So babies get trafficked for sex, okay? Like, that happens. Mothers traffic their babies for sex at times. Like, this is not what we see every single day out in mainstream or advertised on, maybe on the dark web. It is, but, you know, not here as much on the mainstream. But it is happening every day to any person, any walk of life, any person, any walk of life. You know, in terms of the idea that culture can be attacked, right? Like, what is the thing that you would want most in terms of, if you wanted to sort of disempower a group of people, if you wanted to disempower a group of people and say to them, you know, you're worth less than us, and to maintain your power, then you would allow them to hurt themselves, right? Like, hurt yourself. Go ahead. You know, violence, gangs, drugs, sex trafficking, like, oh, go ahead, sing about it, do it, free speech all day long. Well, what do you think happens? You know, what happens to the little girls that are growing up in the community now in Oakland that all my friends are saying they can't even walk down the street? Yeah. They're not free. Yeah. We're in 2023, 2024, and they are not free. That is not okay. So until people start owning their own communities and saying, no, thank you, No, thank you, right? We're going to live up to the values that we have, that we know were God instilled, not man instilled, God instilled. And we're going to sing about that, and we're going to do that, and we're going to live that. To me, it's so important, you know, and striking in this country, what happens when we want to destroy people.
This is awesome information, and I'm so happy to be a part of this show. But I want to just turn the tables a little bit, and I want to talk about, you know, the survivors who are once victims. What are some of the things, some of the challenges that these young women, girls, go through that they have no idea that they're going to be faced with when entering into this space of human trafficking? What are some of the challenges that they face going forward?
No one thinks they're ever going to be hurt. For whatever reason, I don't think anybody goes into it thinking somebody's going to go too far or they're going to be raped. They always think, I'm going to maintain some control. Like, I was a kid, and many of the people who are trafficked don't have their prefrontal cortex. Like, you cannot see, if you don't have your prefrontal cortex, if you don't have your brain fully developed, you cannot see that things you are going to do are going to have consequences. You just can't even, it's just not even possible. And if somebody hasn't trained you sort of to understand that, and you haven't sort of have behaviors that help you make better decisions, then you'll go into things thinking, I'm not going to get hurt.
You sort of
This can't happen to me.
that, and you haven't
It won't happen to me.
behaviors that help you make better decisions, then you'll go into things thinking, I'm not going to get hurt. You sort of
Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So,
We could repeat that. We could put that on a whole.
It's so good. I had to repeat.
But we think as you guys did too, didn't you? I mean, everybody does it. Like, you're thinking, I am going to get into this and I'm going to be in control and nothing's going to happen to me. Now the fear sets in right away. I think maybe even on the first interaction. I've had friends who have worked in clubs. They thought they were going to be offered protection, and then those same people who were going to offer them protection are now telling them to go in a back room and make some more money and to tip them. You know, so things think like you think that you're going to be safe, and then you're not. And I think that to me is the biggest shocker. Then you're embarrassed. Then you're ashamed because you made this decision. You know, you made this decision. Now you messed up. Oh, and now I got hurt. It has to be my fault. And people make you believe that. Slight things they say, little tone of voice, it's your fault. Again, go back to our relationship. You never made me feel that way.
Right. So what is it that you say to a 12-year-old Khadisa at this point?
Hey, you're safe. You know, you are safe. You're loved, and you're going to make some bad decisions. And I think you said this to me exactly when I was getting out of juvenile hall after my 6 months. You're going to make some bad decisions. Things are going to go your way sometimes. Things are not going to go your way. Breakups are going to happen. Heartbreak and also love and good things are going to happen. And I think preparing people for that, for real life, is something we don't do well enough right now. And so for anybody, for any 12-year-old that's out there, whether they've been harmed or they've been sheltered and safe, they are going through their own question marks about life, and they need to know that they're safe and that they're secure and that things are going to be okay and that things are going to get tough sometimes, and then they're going to get better. And like my friend Ophelia Flores said today on an interview, she said she would love to have gone back and told her younger self that she's going to have a beautiful life. Mm-hmm. And it's that reassurance. It's that reassurance that we all need.
Right. So does mental health play a role either pre or post in this space? All
of it. Mm-hmm. I learned recently that between 30 and 40% of the U.S. population has some sort of attachment disturbance. So mm-hmm. something in some part of their development caused an attachment disturbance, and it didn't have to be in the womb, or it didn't even have to be, you know, early childhood, but could have been adolescence, something else. And that sort of measures with what the numbers are for early childhood sexual abuse as well. But at some point they had this, people who are abused as children don't all have attachment disorders. It doesn't go that way. So you could have been, your response to the abuse or to the harm could have been really healthy and good, and secure people came around and helped you and gave you safety and security and helped you heal in those attachments. Most of the time, what I've seen is that, you know, youth who are in foster care, who've been in systems, who have been rotated in and out of those doors, don't have that happening for them. Not even with someone like you. So they end up, unfortunately, this is where we're seeing encampments, we're seeing places where they end up, you know, hospitals,
right,
sometimes cemeteries, you know, like it's very difficult to live a life when you've had these types of just major traumas, complex traumas, you know, trauma upon trauma, moral injuries, something we're just learning about and understanding, and then, you know, the reality of a life without secure attachments. The positive great thing is that there's healing now for it. There are therapies for it. There are therapists out there getting trained in it. We just need more of them, and we need more of them out there doing the work.
Can you talk about the new laws that have been installed? Because it used to be that the guys that were doing the trafficking, you know, there was some misconceptions or miscommunications about who was responsible for these women being out here on the streets. And there was sort of like the traffickers were getting a slap on the hand, but that's changed. And I think that, you know, our population needs to know, you know, what's happening now, you know, to these traffickers.
It's terrible because sometimes the messaging has been to young men, just like to young women, this is your legacy, this is your life, you know, your family was involved in this, you're going to be involved in it. And breaking generational trauma like that is difficult, if not sometimes feels impossible. It feels like we're just products of our environment. So it's difficult, especially when the societal, you know, everything around you also is feeding into it. I don't like to go straight to blaming an individual or saying to an individual, you know, if a girl asks you to be her pimp, say no. I mean, I'm not sure if a campaign like that from me would do as well as maybe from you, Richard, or from you, Ron, like, you know, saying to young men, don't be a pimp. Like, you know, and I don't even know if that's the right messaging, but be a strong man, be a provider, be somebody who loves the person that they're with and cherishes them and wants them to see all their value is worth more than any money or anything that anyone could buy. You know, let the person you know love that let them know that they don't have to get their nails done. They don't have to get their hair done to be the person that you love and that you want to be with, that you want to go spend an afternoon with or be around, you know, that they don't have to always be constantly trying to sort of make themselves into an image that is impossible, an image that is put out there that is just impossible for any of us to live to. So first thing is, I think, messaging to young men about how to love. And just how to be the person for someone in their life. And there are many people out there.
Young men about how to love, and just how to be the person.
To that point, I think it's a bravado thing, and I'm going to give you guys a scenario. I was playing golf some time ago, and I came upon these young gentlemen, and they were all UCLA students, and they were celebrating either a birthday or something. And they were telling me about a party that they had the night before, and they mentioned that they had girls at the party. And I was just listening. You know, I'm familiar with the human trafficking scene, and I began to I knew exactly what they were saying, but I just started questioning them on, so who are these girls and what were they doing there? Oh, they were, you know, and they were kind of just being sly about, oh, they were just girls. And finally it came out in the conversation that these were strippers. These were girls that they paid, you know, to be at this party. And I thought to myself, they have no idea that they're even committing crimes. They have no idea that they're destroying lives. They have no idea that they're assisting, you know, in this situation, in this terrible thing against women. And it's almost like, you know, they don't want to accept the fact that they're hurting somebody, and they were definitely not knowledgeable about what their responsibility was in terms of accepting money or paying money for sexual acts or favors?
Yeah, I mean, I think he did the right thing. I think we talked about it earlier, just by interrupting a little bit in terms of asking the questions, having them reflect and think about it. Doesn't do any good to get in someone's face and to say, "Hey, you're wrong. It's just not going to work." So getting somebody to think for themselves and to break up that group of four to maybe there was one person in that group who maybe didn't think it was great for whatever reason and didn't want to do that again, but might have been lured in to do it again if you hadn't sort of interrupted it. So I think that's a win.
I think I got their attention because I could see them trying to hurry up and get away from me. I can say this, their golf games didn't end up well that day. Yeah.
That's the thing. When we go out and train, we're paid, I guess, to make people uncomfortable. To make, or to make them at least feel not uncomfortable as much as just reflective on and people, they probably don't want to do that when they're golfing with their buddies, and nobody wants to be the one that looks unpopular or like they don't want to, slay it with a woman and like be somehow this, somehow a ladies' man and be a consumer like that. I mean, it's just really unfortunate that that's what we promote.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So in any market, obviously there is, you got the seller and buyer, right? I mean, people are doing this because there's a market for it.
Right.
How are we going after or punishing the people who are actually buying these young ladies or paying for these particular acts? Because if they're just getting like a slap on the wrist, or there's always going to be this market for it.
Right. And there's a couple of groups that actually try to do interruption campaigns where they interfere with demand. So they'll go into places where there's marketplaces and they'll send messages back to people, or they'll say, this is a police officer off duty checking these sites, or do you really want to do this, or something, or at times they could even set up sting operations through those places. So that can happen as well. But again, back to sort of that consumption mentality, the demand, we're creating the demand far before the purchase happens. Long time before the purchase happens, we're creating the demand with all of the different media outlets and what we're consuming. So we are what we consume, right? We are what we eat. So we are what we watch. We are what we put out there to our children. That's what they will become. So that's what we've been doing in terms of, in the name of free speech, which I love. Like I started this saying that, right? I love our freedoms. I want to have our freedoms, which is why I'm here speaking, is because we have free speech. And at the same time, when if someone were to yell fire in a theater or someplace like that, we know that if people were harmed, being trampled upon, that they could be liable for that, those people who did that. So when there's communications going out that are dangerous and that destroy people in a manner, in a speed and in a manner that really does that harm, then I think there also needs to be liability for both those channels that sort of make the money off of it, and then also for the people that are creating it that are doing harm and know that they're doing harm with it, or don't care. They're negligent or have no regard for what it will do.
So are you seeing a lot of incidents where women are involved? Because I know that if a man himself comes to a young girl or a lady, it's kind of like creepy. But we saw in some of these big polarizing, I think it's Harvey Weinstein, I believe it was, where he had the woman that was actually helping him.
Jeffrey Epstein. But Harvey Weinstein was terrible too. But Jeffrey Epstein, but Harvey, both of them had lots of help from various people. I mean, Harvey from his company, arguably. I mean, from his sort of stature and everything that he could offer, and then from all the silence that he could buy from individuals. So I think with Epstein and with Ghislaine Maxwell and like that whole situation where she was out going and recruiting the girls, it was a situation of, I'm not threatening, but they would have some of the girls go out and recruit other girls too, or some of the older women that were out of being sex trafficked or out of that area where they were being asked to do so many sex acts, and then would be asked or be paid to go out and do the recruiting of the younger girls. So absolutely, women can and are involved in recruiting, providing, pimping, trafficking, all of the above. And so that, you don't have a single picture of what a predator or what a trafficker looks like.
Wow, this is awesome information, and it just keeps getting better. It's a sad topic, but it's definitely one that needs to be talked about. What
I'm hoping we could train AI with this video too, Richard. What do you think? Like, get AI to understand that traffickers,
Right.
Don't look a certain way, that caring individuals don't look a certain way, that, there's so much that is going to happen over this next iteration of technology growth. And if we're not a part of the conversation, then, like you said, �プ𝐿 said, like, if you're just going to stay ignorant about it or bury your head in the sand, we're going to end up with these monstrous, we already do with these large language machines and these ways of creating realities that just are not true.
Absolutely. Conscious stupidity. And I've learned tonight that, I thought this stuff, to my own ignorance, happened in a vacuum. It's just, people coming over the border, or it's a small type of person. But the fact that they can, get them out of churches, and the fact that people are actually getting kids out of their homes of an uncle or an aunt or some family or foster care. Foster care is supposed to be a place of protection. Of course, they're supposed to protect you by law, and they're getting them out of there and runaway. So this thing is much more widespread than I thought. So this has been it's been education for me.
Right. Well, I just want to say to Carissa, thank you for being here. And I'm going to just talk about one more story. A few years back, I was able to attend a retreat with survivors. These are women who were forced into trafficking and found their way out through resiliency. And I'm going to tell you something. Those were some of the strongest women that I had ever been around in my whole entire life. And I appreciated being there and learning about this subject. But more importantly, learning the strength that our women possess when they're up against circumstances that are not in their favor. Their resiliency to come back and win, and then go back out on the streets and help other young women who are involved in human trafficking, and create organizations like the one Carissa created, and do the work to help other young come out of this terrible scenario and become professionals, business owners, attorneys, teachers. That experience just opened my eyes. Pastors, yes. And I'm thankful.
Filmmakers.
And filmmakers, yes, you're exactly right.
Computer programmers now too. Some of them are still growing. I mean, all of everybody was still growing who was at that retreat. But
right. But you know what? They had to make the decision, and they did, and that's where their lives changed. That's where the success came from that decision to say enough is enough. And I want to thank you, Carissa Phelps, for being here. You're always amazing. I can never get enough of hearing you teach on this subject. You're a true professional in it. I love you, right? And just continue to fight. Continue to fight.
Hey, quick thing before we go. I know we're coming short on time, but resources. So a young girl she's being in this situation. She says, I want out. I want help. Where does she go? Who does she call? What are her steps?
so dependent on the circumstances, but just really quickly, phone numbers that people can know and they could text. So Be Free is a text number that you could do, and you could just say help, immediately information, just for information, but Be Free, which is 233733, 233733. So if you text that, then you reach the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is, if you wanted to dial a phone number, they could either patch you into your local resources or provide you with some services. Unfortunately, sometimes they do get surges of calls, and that's scary for me to give out the number when there are surges of calls. But this number is available to find out more about resources for trafficking survivors, 888-373-7888. So 888-373-7888. And then the National Human Trafficking Resource Center online can provide some information. Sheltered Alliance, which is Trafficking Sheltered Alliance, is a website we could put into the chat later, and hopefully people can find that resource on your site as well. But okay. The Sheltered Alliance is a group where you can make a self-referral if you need housing immediately, if you need help immediately, get out of some place and you're not having your basic needs met and you're afraid that your basic needs won't be met because you've been trafficked, and that's whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking. These phone numbers, these text messages, these lines are there to help you. And then regionally in various cities, you have groups that are doing amazing work that we can also link to, have more information. That National Trafficking Hotline should connect you to some of those as well. And in terms of mental health and mental health support, since we mentioned that, the 988 Lifeline, I think, is really critical and important that we use that we understand how it's used in our communities. If you don't understand it yet and you haven't really understood how it works in your community, it does need help. It needs community input. It needs community support. So the 988 line is an emergency line for people who are suffering from a mental health crisis, and it's for those people who are witnessing that in their family. They don't want to call 911 maybe, but they know that that person is threatening of their life or others because of a mental health or mental illness, and they need help for them. And it's not traditional police or law enforcement. It's counselors and support that they would get.
Wow, thank you for that. This has been I'm with you, Ron. This has been enlightening. It's been education. It's brought awareness to it. And Carissa, I just want to thank you for giving us your time. And you are truly and clearly built different.
Can't wait to talk about all my community colleges too at some time. I love them all. Cuesta especially, my Green and my Cuesta. Yes, I love my Cuesta. So.
Oh, okay. I thought that was 𝐿AC, that terrible JC that Ron went to. Okay.
If there's anyone who wants to know any more information or any details into Carissa Phelps, she has a book out titled Runaway Girl by Carissa Phelps and Martin Warren. That book can be bought on Amazon. I suggest that you get that book. And thank you to our listeners. I hope you've been enlightened, definitely educated by Carissa Phelps, human trafficking attorney. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. What a great show. Thank you.
Man,
thank you.